Do you feel heard in your own home? Or do you feel unheard? Do you feel that your questions get answered properly? Or do you feel that when you have a question, it's deflected? Turns in from a deflection, they turn it into a victim reality, and the next thing you know, it's a full-on argument. Well, if you feel unheard in your family dynamic, and you want to figure out why that is, you'll want to watch this video. Welcome back, friends. Ashley Berges here today, and today I'm talking about being heard or unheard. And I think that some of us feel as though, well, we're unheard. It seems that when we pose a question or have a conversation, the other person, well, they don't want to hear how we feel, they don't want to answer any questions, and it turns into an argument. So why is that? Why do things turn into that and we feel almost like we don't have the right to feel like how we feel? Because I think that this happens to more people than not, and we don't realize what it's doing to our self-esteem, but we also don't realize that this is not a healthy relationship. If we can't have communication, then what do we have? Many of us have felt unheard for the majority of our life. Some of us have felt unheard since we were a little kid, right? In the household, it seemed like mom or dad wasn't listening. When you would talk about how you felt, it went on deaf ears. And you kind of decided just to do your own thing, right? And then you get married or you get in a relationship with somebody that does the same thing. Or maybe you were constantly heard as a child, but it seems that now in this relationship, nothing you say is honestly acknowledged. And I find this to be very interesting because it's something that we have a tendency of looking over. We don't realize the intensity of that and the struggle of that. And I think the first thing that I want to talk about in today's video is the other person is not listening to how you feel. Okay, so you might bring up your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, and if it's not about them, it's not being addressed. Right? And then the next part of it is that when you do bring up feelings, it's almost like you're attacking them, right? So it's like they feel like you're in a personal attack with them. And so they're kind of defending their situation of why they acted a certain way, even though it made you feel bad, why they acted, and then why you should feel bad that they feel bad about the situation, right? So it seems like it's kind of never resolving, right? You might feel a certain way, but you feel as though you have to keep it in because this person's not going to understand. And if they do actually listen, they're going to think that you're actually pushing their buttons, right? Trying to get something from them. And I feel that when we are in these types of relationships, we begin to discredit our own feelings, or we hold our feelings inside, and so we have a lot of stress and anxiety, but we also have a lot of resentment because we feel as though we can't be honest about how we feel. The second thing that I want to bring up is that when we speak about how we feel, a lot of times the other person makes us feel bad about our feelings. Like we feel bad to feel that way. Right? Because it's almost like we're beaten down for having any feelings besides, oh, everything's great and you're wonderful and everything you do is amazing. If you have any feelings or thoughts outside of that, then there's something wrong with you. And it's interesting how we can start believing that there's something wrong with us, but because we've been treated that way for so long. But do you see how if you're not completely satisfied and happy all the time with this person, that they begin to reflect on you as something's wrong with you? Or when you bring it up, they make you feel bad about bringing it up, and then they pull that victim reality. And let's talk about that, because the third thing I want to talk about is how they flip it around. They flip the script around, and all of a sudden, your validations of your feelings or thoughts are completely gone, and now they've raised themselves up as this victim, right? And how you should feel sorry for them. And it's interesting how we were talking about you, and now it's all them. Right? It's like all of a sudden I've gone from my feelings and now I'm apologizing for my feelings. I'm apologizing for even saying it. Because I didn't say that they're wonderful, fantastic, fabulous, then I'm the problem. I'm the issue. And I think that's interesting because if you've been in this type of dialogue before, you know how it is. It's like they're not listening, and then if they are listening, then they make you feel bad about bringing it up. And then if you say anything else besides perfection about them, then they turn it around on you and tell you about how horrible their day is and how horrible their life is and how you should feel bad about talking about that. And then you pretty much walk into the other room almost feeling beaten down because when you try to express your own feelings, well, there's nothing. You get nothing. You get no parting gifts. You get nothing. You just go into your room and suffer and figure out how to do it again. But it almost feels like you're not heard because you're not heard. because it's constantly going back to them, right? Everything goes back to them. And you're left holding the bag on your emotions, your feelings, and you also don't have a communication to even talk about it unless you're talking about them being perfect. The next thing is that they make us question our feelings. Like we begin to also question, why do I feel this way? Do I have the ability to feel this way? You know? And you start wondering, and when you start questioning your feelings, that puts us in that blender, right? That makes us start questioning our reality. Am I part of the problem? Am I part of the solution? I thought I was part of the solution. Maybe I'm part of the problem. You know, and then we begin to wonder, well, maybe I'm just thin-skinned. Maybe I'm just not strong enough, because they start pushing that, right? Oh, you're always selfish, thinking about you, or you're such a baby, or you need to stop complaining so much, or whatever it is. Maybe you're the big complainer. Maybe you're the baby, right? Maybe you're the asshole. Maybe whatever it is that you're defined as makes you begin to question your feelings, right? And so we end up like not validating our own feelings because we start buying in to the Kool-Aid that the other person's serving about how we're just mean, or we're just short-sighted, or we're just thoughtless, or we're just jealous, or we're just whatever, and we begin to go down that rabbit hole and worrying about how that is and how we're perceived, and starting to wonder, well, maybe my feelings aren't legitimate because I am this way. Something to think about. Another aspect that I find interesting is that when we think different, it's a problem. In a lot of these relationships, like groupthink is where they want us to be at, right? They want us to think the same way they think. They want us to feel the same way they feel, and never thinking anything but awesomeness about the other person. Like we're not allowed to have any sort of disagreement, okay? And that's a real problem, because that's not how we were made. Okay, and we should be able to express. Now, I'm not talking about dramatic and having a disagreement every other second of your life, but we should be able to express when our feelings are not congruent with the other person, or when our thoughts aren't, or when our desires or our dreams aren't, because we have a life too. Okay, we're not a half of a person going into a relationship creating a whole person. We are a whole person going into the relationship with our feelings, our thoughts, our past, our present, you know, our own issues that we have to deal with. And those things make us a solid individual. But sometimes these relationships, it's almost like you feel like you have to just go with the flow because there's going to be an argument. There's going to be a fight. So if you don't resonate exactly with what they're feeling at that time, they're going to argue with you because they don't want to hear it. They just don't want to hear it. And because we've been programmed to not want conflict most of the time, because we are fearful of conflict, we're fearful of having that energy, we decide to just let it go. We don't want to talk about it. We let it go. Because right when they start getting forceful or argumentative or yelling or calling us names, we want to retreat. Right? And so that's really quick to quiet us up, to shut us up, because then we just say, I'm just not going to discuss this anymore because I don't want to get into this argument. Okay? So that's something that is very interesting. But the next thing that I want to talk about is when we do get into the argument. So what happens when you don't walk away? When you do escalate it because you're tired of not being heard? When you do escalate it because of your resentment and anger, or because you haven't had a conversation with your significant other ever? Because it seems like anytime they want to talk is fine. Anytime they feel like a certain way, you give them the platform to talk. But when you do, they make you feel dumb. They make you feel stupid. They make you feel like you act like you're entitled. Right? Oh, well, where is this coming from? You know, I never even knew this. They might name call you. And sometimes that can lead us to what? We escalate it. We start fighting. We start arguing verbally, right? Well, you never listen to me, and da-da-da-da-da, and you're always the victim, and you're always playing the victim, and you're making me feel bad about my emotions, right? You're making me feel bad for trying to express myself honestly. Just because I'm not blowing smoke up your ass doesn't mean that I don't have a legitimate conversation here, right? And then that escalates, and what happens? What you were trying to talk about is no longer heard. The way that you're arguing becomes the main contention. And then you find yourself apologizing for even bringing up anything. But you actually apologize for the argument. They get away from escalating the argument. They get away from name calling you. You're over there apologizing, and now you're trying to make it right. What are you trying to make right? the fact that you can't speak in your own home, the fact that you're not allowed to have your feelings, and then you're apologizing to them for starting the argument, really, and then not listening to you because you had every right to be angry. And see how that starts confusing us? So then we get angry about it, and then we get beaten down mentally about starting the argument, and then we're told about how we're such a jerk all day about how we argued, right? And then we start feeling bad, and then we're like, well, maybe I shouldn't feel angry because that's what I did. And then we begin to question, like, what all happened, and it becomes so confusing. But the funny thing is we do it all over again, and we feel the same way again. But we keep allowing it to be. Another thing that I find interesting in these arguments, too, is that if you actually can get it out before you get angry, whatever you have to say, the other person has a tendency of doing what? They're going to interrupt you all the time, making it more and more difficult for you to communicate your thoughts and feelings. I mean, how many times have you tried to have a conversation with somebody where they interrupt you over and over again? How far does that go? Right? Don't you normally find yourself going, yeah, let's just talk about something else? You know, or, oh yeah, and it turns into whatever they want to turn it into, right? So they literally, they take you down the primrose path, they keep questioning you, you keep trying to figure out what you're going to talk about, and the next thing you know, you're talking about something completely different, right? Because, you know, that's what they do. They get right next to you, they sidle the conversation, and they twist it and turn it and divert it into something else. You don't even remember what you're trying to talk about. Right? I mean, that is annoying and irritating, but also it's a manipulation structure. If I don't want to talk about something, right, I'm going to ask you questions about random other things that's going to get you off target, right? I'm going to totally get you way down that road, and then by the time you're trying to figure it out, then I'm going to literally completely change it, manipulate you into having that conversation, and then you're going to walk off just like, what happened? And that's something else that happens a lot of times, too, is that whole, I'm going to keep interrupting you, I'm going to change the subject because I don't want to talk about this. And by the time you're done with that, you're done. And you don't want to continue the conversation anymore. And for all purposes, that person kind of won because they don't have to even talk about what you wanted to talk about. And there you are, not being able to communicate how you feel again. So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be heard? Do you want to be in a dynamic where you can be heard and you can speak your truth and you can discuss your feelings and emotions? And I know that some of you may have never been in that type of dynamic before, okay? But I need you to ask yourself two questions when you're thinking about what I just talked about. When you're trying to talk with them, are you looking for validation or acceptance from them? Okay, because that's one of the pieces that is really important, because when we're looking for validation or acceptance from somebody that can't give it to us because they haven't given it to them, it's a downhill spiral. It's never going to happen, okay? Somebody can't give you something that they haven't figured out how to get themselves, okay? So definitely a truth there. So you need to ask that. You know, the second thing that I want you to ask yourself is, you know, how long have I been in this relationship where I haven't been able to communicate? And have I tried every aspect and every way to communicate, to get my feelings, thoughts across? And do I feel like this is falling on deaf ears? And is this actually, you know, adversely affecting me? I mean, because I think we have to think about it. You can't compartmentalize anything in your life. If you don't have a way of talking or communicating with your significant other, that's not a healthy relationship. If every time you communicate how you feel, they turn it back on you, or they make you feel bad about it, or they make you discredit your own feelings, or they turn into the victim role and they make you feel bad about even bringing it up because they're the victim, right? Or they name call you and they make you question your validity. Or it really escalates and you get so angry and overwhelmed with rage and anger that you yell, scream, argue, fight, and nothing gets resolved. And then you're found, you know, over there apologizing for what you did. So, I mean, you really want to think about this. Is this a healthy environment? How often do you have a conversation where this person actually listens to you? And the next time that you're trying to speak your truth, I want you to really be so mindful in the moment that you really see each different step that this person walks through with you. Are they discrediting? Are they interrupting to manipulate and change the subject? Are they trying to call you names to make you feel bad? What tactics are they using? Okay? And then another thing is not to lose your cool. But, you know, honestly, we have to have at least some sort of honest conversation with people to have a relationship with them. And so you have to figure out, based on your reality, how you feel about you, how much longer you're willing to endure this, right? And then how much communication and conversation and respect for your feelings and emotions and vice versa matters in a relationship for you. But first things first, I want you to be super mindful in the next conversation that you have. Are you being heard? What's happening? And kind of like write the play-by-play down after it happens and be able to analyze that to see what's really happening in your communication. Because if you feel unheard, you're probably right. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, there's a new membership opportunity here on the channel that you can join and become a member. Obviously, the content's going to stay great here on the channel, but I'm going to be adding some more exclusive content, some more in-depth content there, as well as some live Q&As, which is going to be fun because I'm going to answer questions live on a stream here on YouTube as well on a monthly basis too. So definitely join, become a member today. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of information. It'll grow our community even stronger. And in the comment section in this video, please like the video. And in the comment section, if there's another situation that you've seen, as you've gone through this argumentation and you've struggled to try to speak your truth, was there something that I left out? Another tactic that's used, right? That gets to you, that irritates you, or that makes you question your reality. Because I know that I didn't put everything in this video for time reasons, but I also want to hear if there's something that I left out that's really, really important that you want to bring up so that other people can see that as well, because that's inherently important. We're trying to get knowledge. Knowledge is power. Once you know what you want to deal with and what you don't want to deal with, creates those boundaries. And it helps us to actually create the life that we want to live, right? The opportunities that we want to have and the day-to-day that we want to live. Do we want to live this struggle, or do we want to live in an environment where we feel heard, where we feel unconditionally loved, and vice versa, and we feel safe? All good questions to ask, right? Don't forget to live your true life.